Come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come.
So here I've got a pretty simple design, but I really love the way it turned out. So normally I'd flood the bottom of my cookie because I don't like bare cookie showing. But this one, I decided to leave it like that, and I think it just looks awesome. So we're going to make a Christmas tree here. So I'm going to outline the different sections of the tree. This is using my thick consistency. You can check out my royal icing recipe on my channel. And if you want to know how I make my cookies or how I use tipless bags, any information, it's all on my channel, and you can search under my playlists as well. There's tons of information to make it easier for you guys, and you can always ask me questions in the comments. So the bottom section, I'm just going to outline with the edge of the cookie. And so I outline these different sections, and we're going to flood them at different times so that they stay nice and separate. So with the same consistency, I'm just doing a little squiggle line. These areas are kind of small and narrow. From experience, I kind of know what will crater and what won't. And if I'm ever in doubt, I rather just put a squiggle line in there and just not have to worry about it. So I'm going to go in with my flood icing. And normally I let my outline dry for a few minutes, and then I'll go in, and I feel like it just holds everything much better. The shape kind of holds a lot better. Sometimes when you flood when the outline is still wet, the flood kind of pushes the outline out a little bit. So it's not as crisp as a design, but it's really your preference on how to do it. Always do whatever works best for you. Sometimes, people like to use one consistency, two consistencies. Whatever gives you the results that you're looking for and makes your life easier, there's really no wrong way to do it. So if you notice, I've flooded the top and the middle section, and I've left the other sections blank for now, only because I want these sections to dry before we move on. Whenever we flood something, if you're doing sections next to each other, they will melt together and they'll become one big section. So if I want a separation, or I want to see the seam in my icing, or the divide between the two sections, we have to make sure those kind of dry a little bit before we move on to flood the ones in between. So again, I'm putting my squiggle lines in there, and then I'm going to go and flood. And I'm just going to be careful when I get close to the next section. I want to try to make it as smooth of a line as possible. So I'm trying to hold my bag nice and steady. And the icing usually does the work for you. And if you can't get right into those corners, don't worry about it. You can always use your scribe to bring the icing up a little bit. But we're trying to go for a nice smooth line, so we don't want to get icing kind of on top of the section, then not on top of the section, and it kind of gives us a wobbly line. So this will give us a nice clean look. And of course, you see me pushing the icing in with my scribe to get it right up into the corners. And sometimes even at the very edge there, the outline, it's hard, it's such a small area, it's hard to get my flood in there. So I just go in with my scribe and kind of pull the icing right to the edge. This ended up being one of my favorite cookies. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but I really love the kind of naked cookie on the side, and then it just looks woodsy and Christmassy, and once we add the lights, it just all comes together so nicely. If you're not good at drawing, I'm not either, so don't worry about it. I usually do like a test drawing, or sometimes I'll kind of etch my cookie, scratch it with a scribe, just to give me a rough guideline of where I want to do my outline. So usually if I have a picture, it's easier for me to kind of guide when I'm doing my lines. So always feel free to practice. If you do an outline and you don't like it, you can always scrape it off with your scribe and restart. So I'm going to add a few lines here across the tree, just kind of going up and down slowly. This is my black outline consistency, and the reason we use outline is because we want it to keep its shape. We want it to hold that nice line. A flood will kind of just melt into different, areas, and you don't want that. These will be our string of lights going across the tree. And then you can really use any color you want. I've used 3 colors and I'm just going to alternate them. And these are all my outline consistency. So this is why I love having 2 different consistencies. People think it's, more work if you have to make 2 different ones. But when I make my icing, I make it one consistency. I make it my outline. So all my icing starts out like that. And then I color it, I bag some of the outline, and I thin the rest down for my flood. Then I always have my detail icing ready to go. Another reason why I like having the 2 consistency is if I ever run out of flood, I can always use a little bit of my outline thinned down as my flood, and I don't have to recolor icing again. So what I'm just doing is holding my bag in one spot and slowly pulling it away from the black icing. So as the icing is coming out of my bag, I'm slowly just moving it so it's not quite a ball. It kind of has a little tip to it. And depending on the size of your hole that you've cut, if it's really tiny, you're going to have to put more pressure and wait a little bit longer in the same spot for more icing to come out. If you got a big hole in the bag, then you don't have to put as much pressure and more icing will come out. So you have to play around with it a little bit. You can see my yellow icing. That bag has a really small hole, so it takes me a little bit longer to make the same size light as, let's say, my red icing. And they don't have to always all be the same size. It's kind of just learning to work with what you have. So, if my hole is too big, then I won't put as much pressure. If it's too small, a little bit more. If it's too small and it's not working for me, if the icing's curling, or I have a lot of detail to do with this yellow icing, but the hole is just so small, it's really putting a lot of pressure on my hand and my hand's tired from pressing so much, then you can cut it slightly bigger. So just because you've done it in the beginning doesn't mean you have to do the rest of your cookies like that. If your icing's too thick, you can thin it down. If your hole's too small, you can cut it bigger. And vice versa. If you've cut your hole too big and you're just like, oh my goodness, my details are not looking very good because the hole is just too big and I can't control the icing, go ahead, rebag your icing and cut the hole smaller. Little things like that will make it easier for you. If it's not working, try to kind of change it and make it better. Sometimes it comes with experience. Sometimes it just means, fixing a little thing, and the rest of your set will go a lot smoother. I love Christmas because there's a few main colors that you use a lot. So I made my green and my red in different consistencies, but the blue and the yellow that I don't use too much for bigger designs, I just made one consistency, my outline, because most of it is just detailed. So it's kind of nice not to have to make too many colors and too many flood icings.
Choirs of angels sing in exaltation. Sing, O ye citizens of heaven above.
Let me know which cookie's been your favorite so far, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, and happy baking!